My name is Howard, and I'm 67 years old. 3 weeks after burying my beloved wife Margaret, her lawyer called me to his downtown office. I expected maybe a small life insurance policy, but what he revealed left me speechless. Margaret had inherited $35 million from her late father's tech patents, keeping it secret even from me. The lawyer handed me the documents, naming me sole heir. That evening, my son Bradley showed up at my door, and his first words chilled my blood. "Dad, we need to talk about Mom's money." Those 7 words hung in the air of my living room, like a death sentence. Bradley stood in my doorway with his wife Jennifer, both dressed as if they were attending a board meeting, rather than visiting a grieving father. Their formal attire struck me as odd for a Tuesday evening, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. My son had barely visited during Margaret's final months, claiming work kept him too busy. Now, 3 weeks after her funeral here, he stood with an intensity in his eyes I'd never seen before. They settled onto my couch, refusing my offer of coffee or water. Jennifer clutched her designer purse like a weapon, while Bradley leaned forward, his jaw set with determination. "I know about the $35 million, Dad," Bradley said without preamble. "Mom told me everything 2 years ago when she first got diagnosed." The words hit me like a physical blow. 2 years Margaret had known about her inheritance for 2 years, and never mentioned it to me, her husband of 42 years. "What are you talking about, son?" I managed to ask, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Bradley pulled out his phone, scrolling to find something. "Mom's father died 5 years ago. His software patents were worth a fortune. She inherited everything as his only child, but never told anyone except me." He showed me a screenshot of bank statements with numbers that made my head spin. "She said she was waiting for the right time to tell you." Bradley continued, his tone shifting to something almost accusatory. "But then she got sicker, and I guess she never found that right time. Except she did have time to change her will." Jennifer spoke for the first time, her voice crisp and businesslike. "Howard, we understand this is a shock, but we need to be practical here. Bradley is your only child, Margaret's only child. That money should naturally pass to him." I stared at them both, trying to process not just the revelation about the money, but their strange behavior. Throughout our conversation, Bradley kept checking his phone, typing quick messages. Jennifer's eyes darted to the front door repeatedly, as if expecting someone. "The lawyer said Margaret left everything to me," I said slowly. "If she wanted Bradley to have it, she would have arranged that." Bradley's face darkened. She wasn't thinking clearly near the end. The medications, the pain, it all affected her judgment. She changed her will just 1 month before she died. 1 month, Dad. After promising me for 2 years that I would be taken care of. He produced a folder from Jennifer's purse, spreading documents across my coffee table. "Look, here's the original will from 2 years ago. Everything was supposed to go to me. She told me to start planning to make arrangements based on that promise." "What kind of arrangements?" I asked, though something cold was creeping up my spine. Jennifer jumped in eagerly. "We've enrolled the twins in Exeter Academy, put a down payment on a house in Westchester, and Bradley's invested in a new business venture. All based on Margaret's assurance that Bradley would inherit." "You spent money you didn't have?" I couldn't hide my disbelief. "We invested in our future," Bradley corrected sharply, "based on a promise from my dying mother. Now you're sitting on $35 million while we're facing financial ruin." The room fell silent, except for the grandfather clock Margaret had inherited from her mother. Its steady ticking seemed to count down to something inevitable. "I need time to think," I said finally. "This is all so sudden. I just buried your mother, Bradley. Can't we discuss this after I've had time to grieve?" Bradley stood abruptly, Jennifer following suit. "Time, Dad. We don't have time. Do you understand what I'm telling you? We have commitments, obligations. People are expecting payment." "What people?" I asked, but Bradley was already heading for the door. "You have 24 hours to come to your senses." he said, pausing at the threshold. Transfer the money to me, or things are going to get complicated. You don't want to force me to take legal action against my own father. Think about what Mom would have wanted. As they walked to their car, I heard Jennifer whisper urgently to Bradley. The window was cracked, just enough for her words to drift back. Did you confirm Plan B with the locksmith? He'll be here at 3 a.m., Bradley replied. My father's always been a heavy sleeper, and with those sleeping pills he's been taking since Mom died, he won't hear a thing. I stood frozen behind my front door, my hand still on the knob. My own son was plotting against me, and I had no idea how deep this betrayal would go. Sleep wouldn't come that night, but not because of grief this time. Bradley's words echoed in my mind, mixing with Jennifer's whispered mention of a locksmith. I lay in bed fully clothed, having made a show of taking my sleeping pills in front of the kitchen window, in case they were watching. At 1 a.m, I crept downstairs and installed a recording app on my phone. My hands shook as I set it up, part of me still refusing to believe my suspicions. This was Bradley, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, who I'd walked down the aisle at his wedding. Surely I was misunderstanding something. By 2:30, I was positioned at the top of the stairs, my phone recording every nerve in my body, taut with tension. The house was dark, except for the moonlight streaming through the hallway window. At exactly 3 a.m., I heard the unmistakable sound of a key turning in my front door lock. 3 figures entered my home. In the dim light from the street, I recognized Bradley immediately. Behind him was a man carrying a toolbox, presumably the locksmith, and a third man hauling cardboard boxes. Keep it quiet, Bradley instructed in a low voice. He took 2 Ambien around 9. He'll be out cold until at least 8. They moved with practiced efficiency, and I realized with growing horror that this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This had been planned, rehearsed even. Change all the locks front and back, Bradley directed the locksmith. I want new deadbolts too. He's getting forgetful, might wander off and hurt himself. The locksmith grunted his acknowledgement and set to work. Meanwhile, the third man began packing items from my living room into boxes. Family photos, Margaret's collection of first edition books, even the crystal vase we'd received as a wedding gift. Just the valuables for now, Bradley told him. We'll send movers for the furniture once he's settled in the facility. Facility. My blood ran cold. Bradley pulled out his phone, and I carefully adjusted my own to capture his conversation. Marcus, yeah, I'm at the house now. The old man's sleeping like a baby. He laughed, but it was an ugly sound I'd never heard from him before. Tomorrow morning, we move him to Golden Acres. I've already got the paperwork signed, power of attorney the works. Doc Brennan came through with the dementia diagnosis. He paused, listening to the other end. No, he won't fight it. He's been confused since Mom died, forgetting things. The neighbors will back me up. Mrs. Patterson saw him wandering in his pajamas last week. Another pause. That was me in his pajamas, but she's half blind anyway. Her testimony will hold up. My mind raced. I'd never wandered anywhere in my pajamas. Bradley had been impersonating me, setting up a false narrative of mental decline. Once I have power of attorney, we can start liquidating, Bradley continued. The estate should be settled within 6 months. You'll have your $2 million by Christmas with interest. $2 million. My son owed someone named Marcus $2 million. Yeah, I know what happens if I don't pay. That's why we're moving fast. The old man won't know what hit him. The locksmith finished the front door and moved to the back. Bradley ended his call and supervised the packing, occasionally holding up items, and either nodding or shaking his head. That's real silver, he told the third man, pointing to Margaret's tea service. Box it carefully. They worked for another hour, while I remained frozen at the top of the stairs recording everything. My legs cramped, my back ached, but I didn't dare move. Finally, Bradley seemed satisfied. All right, that's enough for tonight. Tony, you'll bring the van at 7 sharp. We'll load him up before the neighbors are awake. Tell the facility to have the sedatives ready in case he gets agitated. They prepared to leave, and I knew I had to act. Carefully, silently, I crept back to my bedroom and grabbed the bag I'd packed earlier with important documents, cash from my safe and Margaret's jewelry box. I slipped down the back stairs to the kitchen. The new lock on the back door glinted mockingly at me. I was trapped in my own home. Then I remembered the garage side door. We'd been meaning to fix that lock for years, but never got around to it. I made it to the garage, blessing our procrastination for once. The side door opened with its familiar squeak. I held my breath, but no one came to investigate. My car keys were in my pocket, but starting the engine would alert them. Instead, I pushed the car into neutral, and with strength, born of desperation, rolled it down the slight incline of our driveway. Only when I reached the street did I start the engine, pulling away from the house I'd called home for 30 years. In my rearview mirror, I saw Bradley emerge, probably to check on the noise, but I was already turning the corner. I drove for 10 minutes before pulling into an empty parking lot to catch my breath. My hands shook as I reached for Margaret's jewelry box, seeking some connection to her in this madness. Inside, atop her mother's pearls, was an envelope with my name in her careful handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it. My dearest Howard, if you're reading this, it means Bradley has shown his true colors. I'm so sorry, my love. I wanted to tell you everything, but I needed to protect you first. Go to the estate, the one Father left me. The gate code is our wedding date. Jacob is waiting for you. He knows everything. Trust him. All my love, Margaret. I read the note 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Even in death, my wife was protecting me. I entered the estate's address into my GPS, a property I'd only visited twice during our marriage. Margaret had always said it was too big, too empty for just the two of us. Now I understood she'd been keeping it as a sanctuary. As I drove through the night toward an uncertain future, one thing was crystal clear. The son I'd raised was gone, replaced by a stranger capable of betrayal I never could have imagined. But Margaret, my brilliant, cautious Margaret, had seen it coming. The 3-hour drive stretched ahead of me each mile, taking me farther from my old life, and closer to answers I both craved and dreaded. Dawn was breaking as I pulled up to the wrought iron gates of Margaret's father's estate. My fingers trembled as I punched in our wedding date on the keypad, 061-51983. The gate swung open silently, revealing a tree-lined drive that curved toward a mansion I'd last seen at our 10th anniversary party. The 50-acre property sprawled before me, manicured lawns giving way to wooded areas that provided complete privacy. The house itself was a Georgian-style manor, its red brick facade glowing in the early morning light. I'd always felt out of place here, a middle-class teacher married to the daughter of a tech mogul. As I parked in the circular driveway, a figure emerged from a cottage near the main house. The man was perhaps 75, with silver hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He walked with the measured pace of someone who'd spent a lifetime caring for this land. "Mr. Henderson," he said, extending a weathered hand. "I'm Jacob Morrison. Mrs. Margaret told me to expect you, though I'll admit I thought it might be under happier circumstances." "She mentioned you in her letter," I said, shaking his hand. "She said you know everything." Jacob's expression grew somber. "Indeed I do, sir. If you'll come with me, there's much to show you. But first, you look exhausted. When did you last eat?" I couldn't remember. The last few days had blurred together in a haze of grief and shock. Jacob led me into the main house through a side entrance that opened into a modest kitchen, nothing like the grand foyer I remembered from past visits. Mrs. Margaret preferred this entrance, he explained, setting about making coffee and toast. Said the front was for showing off, but this was for living. As I ate, Jacob began to fill in the gaps of my knowledge. "I've been the caretaker here for 40 years, served Mrs. Margaret's father before her. When he passed 5 years ago, she asked me to stay on, keep the place ready. For emergencies," she said. "She knew this would happen," I asked. Jacob poured himself coffee and sat across from me. "She suspected. About 3 years ago, she hired a private investigator, started noticing irregularities in Bradley's stories requests for money that didn't quite add up. Then came her diagnosis, and everything accelerated. He led me through the house to a study I'd never seen before. The door required a separate code which Jacob provided. Inside was a room that took my breath away. Filing cabinets lined one wall, a bank of monitors showed various views of the property, and a desk held several laptops and boxes of documents. Mrs. Margaret called it her insurance policy, Jacob explained. Everything she gathered is here. Financial records, investigation reports, recordings. I sank into the desk chair, overwhelmed. A folder marked Bradley Gambling Debts caught my eye. Inside were credit card statements, casino receipts, and photos of my son at high-stakes poker games. The numbers made me sick. He'd lost hundreds of thousands over the past 3 years. This Marcus Volkov, he owes money to. Jacob said quietly, "He's not a patient man." The investigator, Mr. Stevens, discovered Bradley got in deep with the wrong people. Started with sports betting, escalated to underground games. When he couldn't pay, he borrowed from Volkov. Another folder contained recordings. Jacob showed me how to access them on one of the laptops. I listened to my son's voice recorded at various locations, making promises he couldn't keep lying about collateral. He didn't have swearing on his inheritance that he'd make good on his debts. "There's something else," Jacob said gently. "A video Mrs. Margaret recorded. She wanted you to see it when you were ready." Was I ready? I nodded, and Jacob clicked play. Margaret's face filled the screen, thinner than I remembered, but still beautiful. She was sitting in this very chair, wearing the blue cardigan I'd given her for her last birthday. "Hello, my darling Howard," she began, and her voice broke my heart all over again. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and Bradley has made his move. I'm so sorry I kept this from you, but I needed to protect you from the truth for as long as possible." She explained how her father's death had left her with more money than she'd ever imagined. How she'd wanted to tell me, but then discovered Bradley's gambling, his debts, his increasingly dangerous associates. "I hired professionals to investigate, because I couldn't believe it myself," she continued. "Our son, our baby boy, had become someone I didn't recognize. When I confronted him during one of my chemo sessions when you were getting my prescriptions, he didn't deny it. Instead, he asked me to sign power of attorney papers. He said it was for emergency medical decisions, but I read them carefully. They would have given him control of everything." She paused, touching her wedding ring in a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times. "I changed my will to protect you, to protect us. Bradley will come for you, Howard. He's desperate, and desperate people do terrible things. But I've prepared for this. Stay at the estate. Jacob will help you. Mr. Morrison, my lawyer, knows everything. And Carl Stevens, the investigator, is still on retainer." She leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. "There's one more thing. When Bradley comes, and he will come, he won't be alone. But neither will you. I've arranged for someone special to be here, someone he won't expect. Look for the person carrying our wedding album. Trust them completely." The video ended with her blowing a kiss. "I love you, Howard. Be strong, my darling. This too shall pass." I sat in silence, absorbing everything. Jacob gave me time, busying himself with opening curtains and letting light into the room. The security system, he said eventually, was Mrs. Margaret's last project. Cameras everywhere, all recording to secure servers. She wanted to make sure any confrontation would be documented. He showed me the monitor setup. High-definition cameras covered every angle of the property from the gates to the house perimeter. The system was military-grade, far beyond what a normal residence would need. "She knew he'd come here?" I asked. "She was certain of it. The estate is worth $12 million on its own, plus the liquid assets. Bradley knows about it, visited here several times as a child. He'll assume you're vulnerable here, isolated." I spent the rest of the day reviewing documents, watching recordings, understanding the full scope of my son's deception. Each file revealed another layer of lies, another debt, Another broken promise. The investigator had been thorough, documenting Bradley's meetings with loan sharks, his forged documents, using my signature as collateral, his elaborate schemes to access Margaret's money. By evening, I was exhausted but educated. My son hadn't just fallen into gambling. He'd built an entire false life, funded by IOUs he never intended to pay. Until now. Until $35 million presented itself as the solution to all his problems. "What do I do?" I asked Jacob as we ate dinner in the kitchen. "Mrs. Margaret left very specific instructions," he replied. "Tomorrow, Mr. Morrison will arrive with his team. The day after, Mr. Stevens will brief you on Bradley's current situation. And then, we wait." "Wait for what?" Jacob's expression was grim, but determined. For Bradley to walk into the trap his mother set. She knew him better than he knew himself. Every move he's about to make, she anticipated. You just have to trust her plan. As I settled into one of the guest bedrooms that night, I felt a strange mixture of grief and gratitude. Margaret was gone, but her love surrounded me, still protecting me from beyond the grave. Outside, security lights illuminated the grounds, and cameras kept their silent vigil. Somewhere out there, Bradley was probably discovering I'd escaped his trap. He'd be angry, desperate, more dangerous than ever. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't afraid. Margaret had given me the tools to fight back. I fell asleep, clutching her pillow, which still smelled faintly of her perfume, knowing that tomorrow the real battle would begin. The next morning arrived with a series of frantic phone calls that I let go to voicemail. Bradley's increasingly agitated messages played through the speaker as Jacob and I ate breakfast. "Dad, where are you? I came by to check on you and the house is empty. I'm worried sick. Call me immediately." Then, 10 minutes later, "Dad, this isn't funny. We need to talk. You can't just disappear." By the third message, his mask had slipped entirely. "I know you're listening to this. You think you're clever. You have no idea what you've started. Call me back now, or I'm going to the police and reporting you as missing and mentally incompetent." "Let him," said a voice from the doorway. James Morrison entered, looking every inch the successful attorney in his tailored suit. Behind him were two younger associates carrying briefcases. "In fact, I hope he does. Filing a false police report will add nicely to the charges we're building." Morrison had been Margaret's lawyer for 20 years, handling her father's estate, and now mine. He set up his team in the dining room, transforming it into a legal command center. "First things first," Morrison said, producing a document. "This is an affidavit from Dr. Sarah Chen, the leading geriatric psychiatrist in the state. She examined you yesterday evening." "I didn't see any doctor yesterday," I said, confused. Morrison smiled. "The lady who came by around 7 said she was checking on the new security system. That was Dr. Chen. Margaret arranged for her to do casual wellness checks, establishing a clear record of your mental competence. She'll testify that you're sharp as a tack." His associate, a young woman named Rachel, pulled up financial records on her laptop. "We've also frozen any accounts Bradley had potential access to. This morning, he tried to initiate transfers from 3 of your banks claiming power of attorney. All rejected." My phone rang again. This time, it was my bank manager. Morrison nodded for me to answer and put it on speaker. "Mr. Henderson, this is David from First National. I wanted to alert you that your son was just here with documents claiming you're incapacitated. He demanded access to your accounts. We've refused, of course, but he became quite aggressive. We've had to call security." "Thank you, David," I said, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. "Please document everything and send copies to my attorney, James Morrison." After I hung up, Morrison's other associate, Thomas, spoke up. "We've been monitoring Bradley's communications through legal channels. He's getting desperate. Last night he met with Marcus Volkov and promised him payment within 48 hours. "How do we know this?" I asked. "Because Mr. Stevens has been invaluable," Morrison replied. At that moment, Carl Stevens himself walked in. The private investigator was younger than I'd expected, perhaps 45, with the alert bearing of former law enforcement. "Gentlemen," Stevens nodded to us before focusing on me. "Mr. Henderson, your son, is in serious trouble. Volkov isn't just a loan shark. He's connected to the Bratva, the Russian mob. Bradley owes him $2 million in principal, plus another $3 million in interest and penalties. $5 million. I couldn't fathom such a sum. And growing daily. Volkov's given him one final deadline, 72 hours from last night. Bradley's promised him he'll have access to your wife's estate by then." Stevens pulled out surveillance photos. "These were taken this morning. Bradley's being followed by Volkov's men. They're not letting him out of their sight." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was simple. "Your son owes us. You pay, or he pays. 72 hours. Morrison immediately documented the threat. "Extortion added to the list. Mr. Henderson, I need you to understand something. Bradley's not just trying to steal from you. He's put your life in danger by involving these people." But Margaret anticipated this too. Rachel pulled up more documents. Mrs. Henderson established a trust that specifically protects the estate from any claims by creditors, including those of family members. Even if Bradley somehow gained control, he couldn't liquidate fast enough to pay Volkov. "He doesn't know that," Stevens added. "He's operating on desperation and bad information." The phone rang again. This time it was Bradley, and something in his voice had changed. Morrison gestured for me to answer. "Hello, son." "Don't you hello son me," Bradley snarled. "Do you have any idea what you've done? I had everything arranged. The facility was expecting you. Now, I look like an idiot, and worse, much worse." "Bradley, you tried to lock me out of my own home. It was for your own good. You're not thinking clearly. Mom's death has affected you. You need help supervision." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years," I replied calmly. "And I know about Marcus Volkov. I know about the gambling debts. I know about everything." Silence. Then barely a whisper, "How?" "Your mother knew Bradley. She knew everything. She prepared for this." "That's impossible. She was sick, confused from the medications." Morrison slipped me a note. "Keep him talking. We're recording." "She was sick, but never confused." I continued. "She hired investigators Bradley. She has recordings of you trying to get her to sign power of attorney during her chemo sessions. She has evidence of every forged document, every lie, every debt." "You're bluffing." But his voice lacked conviction. "I check your email." Rachel had prepared this. With a few clicks, she sent Bradley a sample of what we had: a photo of him at an underground casino, a bank statement showing forged signatures, a transcript of him promising Volkov collateral he didn't have. I heard his sharp intake of breath as he opened the files. "That's just a taste," I said. "We have 2 years' worth. Now I'm going to offer you something your mother would have wanted. Get help. Check into rehab for your gambling addiction. Cut ties with Volkov. We'll help you relocate if necessary. But this ends now. No more schemes, no more trying to steal what isn't yours." "You don't understand." Bradley's voice cracked. "It's too late for rehab. Volkov wants his money in 2 days or what, Bradley? He said he'd take it out of me in pieces. And if that's not enough, he'll come for you. Dad, I never meant for it to go this far." Morrison was already on his other phone, speaking quietly to someone. Stevens stepped out to make his own calls. "Where are you now?" I asked. "Driving. They're following me. 2 cars. I can't go home. They know where Jennifer and the kids are." Despite everything, paternal instinct kicked in. "Come to the estate, Bradley. We'll figure this out." "The estate." His laugh was bitter. "You think I'm stupid? You've probably got police waiting." "No police. Just me and some lawyers. We'll find a solution, but you have to stop trying to take what isn't yours." 48 hours, Dad. That's all I have. 48 hours to come up with $5 million or I'm dead. And after me, they'll come for you. So you can sit there with your lawyers and your moral high ground. But we're both dead if you don't give me that money." The line went dead. Morrison lowered his phone, his expression grave. "I've been in touch with the FBI. They've been building a case against Volkov for years. Bradley's situation might be the break they need. If he'll cooperate, wear a wire testify." "They'll protect him?" I asked. "Witness protection if necessary. But he has to come in voluntarily. He has to want to change." Stevens returned, his face tense. "My sources say Volkov's getting impatient. He's called in additional muscle from Boston. Whatever's going to happen, it'll be soon." "What about the estate?" I asked. "Are we safe here?" "As safe as anywhere," Stevens assured me. "The security is excellent, and I've arranged for additional personnel. Discreet professional. They'll patrol the grounds." That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. Was it Bradley coming to talk Volkov's men, coming to collect? Or just the old house settling? At 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Bradley. "I'm sorry for everything. Tell Mom I'm sorry too." I immediately called him back, but it went straight to voicemail. Morrison and Stevens were already up making calls trying to track him down. "He's not at his house," Stevens reported. "Jennifer says he never came home. She's packing up the kids going to her mother's." The next morning brought no news of Bradley. Volkov's deadline was now 24 hours away. We waited, planned, prepared. The FBI agreed to have agents on standby. The security team reported no breaches. Then at noon, the gate camera showed a familiar car approaching. Bradley's BMW, moving slowly, erratically. He was alone, or appeared to be. "Let him in," I said, despite Morrison's protests. "He's still my son." But as the car pulled up to the house, I realized something was wrong. Bradley wasn't driving. He was in the passenger seat, slumped against the window. The driver was a massive man in a black suit, and behind them, 2 more cars followed. Volkov's men had come to collect, and they'd brought Bradley as either leverage or proof of their seriousness. The war Margaret had prepared for was about to begin, and I was standing on the front lines armed only with her foresight and my determination to survive. The doorbell rang its cheerful chime, a stark contrast to the danger on my doorstep. Morrison grabbed my arm as I moved to answer it. "Remember," he said urgently, "everything is being recorded. Every word, every threat. Let them hang themselves." I nodded, took a deep breath, and opened the door to face the consequences of my son's choices. The man at my door stood 6 feet 5 inches tall with shoulders that barely fit through the doorframe. His suit was expensive, but couldn't hide the prison tattoos creeping up his neck. Behind him, 2 more men flanked my barely conscious son. "Mr. Henderson," the giant said in accented English. "I am Dmitri. Mr. Volkov sends his regards and regrets that business has brought us to your beautiful home." "What have you done to my son?" I demanded, trying to see past them to Bradley. "Nothing permanent, yet. He had too much to drink last night trying to find courage. May we come in?" "This is conversation better had inside, yes." Morrison stepped beside me. "I'm James Morrison, Mr. Henderson's attorney. Any conversation you have will be on the record." Dimitri's smile was cold. "Lawyers. In my country we have saying about lawyers and cockroaches. Both survive everything." He pushed past us, his men dragging Bradley behind. "But please record everything. Mr. Volkov wants this very legal, very proper." They deposited Bradley on my couch. He was conscious, but clearly sedated, his eyes unfocused. I rushed to him, checking his pulse. "Just something to keep him calm," Dimitri explained, settling into my armchair as if he owned it. He was very upset, making threats about FBI about recordings. We don't like such talk. "What do you want?" Morrison asked. "Simple. Bradley owes $5 million. He says his father has $35 million. Easy math. Yes, you give us 5, we go away. Everyone happy. And if we refuse?" Dimitri's expression didn't change. "Then we take Bradley with us. He has no money, but he has other value. Organs, for instance. Kidney brings good price. Liver, also valuable. Heart? Well, heart is worth most of all. My blood froze. Morrison's hand on my shoulder kept me from lunging at him. However, Dmitri continued, Mr. Volkov is reasonable man. He offers alternative. Sign over estate this beautiful property. Worth 12 million. Yes, more than enough to cover debt and inconvenience. I need time to consider, I said. Of course, you have... Dmitri checked his Rolex. 20 hours. We'll wait here with Bradley. For his safety, you understand. Stevens appeared in the doorway, having entered through the back. Actually, gentlemen, you'll find waiting here difficult. This property is protected by state law as a historical landmark. I've just notified the police of trespassers. They'll be here in 5 minutes. Dmitri's eyes narrowed. You threaten us with police. Your son will not thank you when he disappears. No threats, Stevens replied calmly. Just facts. You can leave now peacefully and return tomorrow for Mr. Henderson's answer. Or you can explain to local law enforcement why you're holding a man against his will. The sound of sirens in the distance made the decision for them. Dmitri stood straightening his suit. 20 hours, Mr. Henderson. Have our money ready. He gestured to his men. Leave the deadbeat. He's no use to us sedated. They left quickly, but not hurriedly, maintaining their intimidating presence until the last moment. As their cars pulled away, 2 police cruisers passed them coming in. Morrison handled the police, explaining we'd had unwanted visitors, but they'd left. No need to file a report yet. The officers understood. Morrison's reputation carried weight. Once they left, we focused on Bradley. Stevens checked him over with surprising medical knowledge. Benzodiazepine, probably Rohypnol, he diagnosed. He'll be foggy for a few hours, but fine. Let's get him upstairs. We settled Bradley in a guest room. I sat beside him, watching my son sleep off whatever they'd given him. Despite everything, I still saw the little boy who'd climbed into our bed during thunderstorms. Howard. Morrison said gently, we need to discuss strategy. They'll be back, and they won't be patient. In the study, the full team had assembled. Morrison Stevens, Rachel Thomas, and now 2 FBI agents who'd arrived discreetly. Agent Sarah Chen. The woman introduced herself, and I recognized her as the psychiatrist from earlier. My partner, Agent David Park. We've been monitoring Volkov for 3 years. Your son's situation gives us an opportunity. You want to use him as bait, I said flatly. We want to protect both of you while taking down a major criminal organization, Chen corrected. Bradley's already in danger. This is his only way out. They outlined their plan. When Volkov's men returned, we'd be ready. The estate would be wired for sound and video. Hidden agents would be positioned throughout the property. Bradley would wear a wire, getting Volkov's men to explicitly state their crimes. And the judge? I asked, remembering Margaret's video message about someone unexpected. Morrison smiled. Judge Patricia Hartwell. She was Margaret's father's closest friend, and has been briefed on everything. She'll be here with federal warrants ready to act the moment we have enough evidence. What about Bradley? Will he cooperate? Let's find out, Stevens suggested. He should be waking up soon. Indeed, Bradley was stirring when we returned to his room. His eyes focused on me with difficulty. Dad, what? Where am I? You're safe, son. You're at the estate. Recognition dawned, followed by panic. No. I can't be here. They'll find me. He tried to sit up, but fell back, still weak. They already did, I said quietly. They brought you here, remember? Bradley's face crumpled. I'm so sorry, Dad. I never meant... It started small, just a few bets. Then, I kept losing, kept thinking the next hand would win it all back. I know, I said. Mom knew too. She left evidence, Bradley. Everything. She knew. Tears streamed down his face. Of course she knew. She always knew everything. God, what would she think of me now? She'd want you to make it right, Morrison interjected. And you can. The FBI is offering you a deal. Agent Chen explained the terms. Bradley would wear a wire, testify against Volkov, and enter witness protection if necessary. In exchange, immunity for his crimes and a chance to start over. What about Jennifer, the kids? Bradley asked. They can join you in the program if needed, Park assured him. But first, we need Volkov on tape, admitting to extortion, threatening violence, running illegal gambling operations. Bradley was quiet for a long moment. Then, Mom really set all this up. I showed him her video, the parts about hoping he'd find his way back. By the end, he was sobbing. I'll do it, he said finally. I'll wear the wire. I owe her that much. I owe you both. The rest of the day was spent in preparation. Bradley was fitted with state-of-the-art recording equipment. The estate's security room became FBI Command Central. Judge Hartwell arrived at sunset, a formidable woman in her 70s, who hugged me and said Margaret would be proud. She came to me 6 months ago, Hartwell explained. Showed me everything. Made me promise to be here when it all went down. Patricia. She said, my boys are going to need you. As night fell, everyone took their positions. Agents posed as gardeners, maintenance workers, and security guards. Morrison and his team set up in the dining room with legal documents ready. Stevens coordinated surveillance from the security room. I found myself in the study with Bradley father and son waiting for dawn, and the confrontation that would determine both our futures. Dad, Bradley said quietly, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know I love you. I lost my way, but I never stopped loving you and Mom. I know, son, I replied, though my heart was heavy. Let's get through tomorrow. Then we'll figure out how to be a family again. Outside, the estate's cameras kept their vigil. Somewhere in the darkness, federal agents waited. And in just a few hours, Marcus Volkov's men would return, walking into a trap my brilliant wife had designed to save both her son and her husband. The stage was set. The players were in position. All that remained was for the curtain to rise on the final act of Margaret's carefully orchestrated plan. Dawn broke gray, and drizzling fitting weather for what was to come. Bradley sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, the wire taped to his chest beneath his shirt. Agent Chen made final adjustments to the equipment, while Park reviewed the signal words one more time. If you feel threatened, say, I need to think about it, Park instructed. We'll move in immediately. And if they detect the wire? Bradley asked, voicing everyone's fear. They won't, Chen assured him. This is cutting-edge tech, undetectable by standard sweeps. Just act natural. Be desperate. Be scared. It won't be hard. At exactly 9 a.m., the gate camera showed 3 black SUVs approaching. More vehicles than yesterday. Volkov himself had come. Positions, everyone, Stevens commanded through our earpieces. I stood in the foyer with Bradley and Morrison. Behind the dining room door, Judge Hartwell waited with Rachel and Thomas. Federal agents held at strategic points throughout the property. The doorbell rang. Bradley answered this time, his hand trembling slightly. Dmitri stood there again, but behind him was a smaller man, elegantly dressed with silver hair and cold gray eyes. Mr. Marcus Volkov, Dmitri announced unnecessarily. Volkov entered like he owned the place, his eyes taking in every detail. 4 more men followed, spreading through the ground floor without asking permission. Bradley Volkov said, his voice carrying a slight Russian accent. You look better than last night. The sedative wore off well? Yes. Mr. Volkov, Bradley stammered. I didn't expect you personally. $5 million is worth my personal attention. Your father, I presume. He turned to me, offering a manicured hand I didn't take. Let's get this over with, I said coldly. Volkov smiled. Direct. I like this. So different from your son who promises, but never delivers. He settled onto the couch. So, Mr. Henderson, you have my money? It's not your money, Morrison interjected. Bradley's debts are his own. Ah, the lawyer. Always with technicalities. Volkov waved dismissively. Let me explain reality. Bradley took my money. He lost my money. Now someone pays my money back with interest. Simple. You run illegal gambling operations, Morrison stated. Those debts aren't legally enforceable. Volkov laughed to sound like ice cracking. Legal. You think I care about legal, Bradley? Tell your father what happens to people who talk about legal. Bradley swallowed hard. They disappear. Like Tommy Chen last year. Owed $300,000, threatened to go to the police. They found him in pieces in Boston Harbor. Pieces, Volkov repeated with satisfaction. Though Tommy was quick. Pieces in harbor. Your son, I think, deserves more creativity. Maybe pieces mailed to you, one at a time. A finger today, ear tomorrow. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to remain calm. This was exactly what we needed on tape. Or, Volkov continued, we avoid unpleasantness. You have $35 million from your wife? Yes, $5 million is nothing. Pay it, and we leave everyone intact. I won't pay for illegal debts, I said firmly. Volkov's eyes hardened. Then we take the estate. Dmitri, you have papers. Dmitri produced documents. Transfer of deed. Bradley signs as power of attorney, property becomes ours. I revoked any power of attorney, I said. Did you? Volkov smiled coldly. Bradley, show your father what you signed last month. With shaking hands, Bradley pulled out papers. New power of attorney documents, dated after Margaret's death with my forged signature. I had to, Bradley whispered. They said they'd hurt Jennifer and the kids. So you see, Volkov said, one way or another, I get paid. Your choice is whether your family stays whole while it happens. This was the moment. I caught Bradley's eye, giving him the slightest nod. Wait, Bradley said suddenly. What if there's more money? Volkov leaned forward, interested. More? Dad doesn't know everything. Mom had offshore accounts, cryptocurrency. Another 20 million hidden. Bradley was improvising now, but brilliantly. I have the access codes. I'll give them to you, but only if you let my father alone. Take it all, just leave him out of it. Bradley, no, I protested, playing my part. Shut up, Dad. Bradley turned back to Volkov. 25 million total. 5 for what I owe, 20 as apology for the trouble. But you have to promise to leave my family alone forever. Volkov considered this. Show me proof. Bradley pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the screen. He showed Volkov something that made the Russian's eyes light up. Real cryptocurrency, Volkov murmured. Untraceable. Smart woman, your mother. Stupid woman to marry into weak family, but smart with money. He stood. Very well. Transfer it now. Not here, Bradley said. Too many witnesses. Just you, me, and Dmitri. We go somewhere private. I make the transfer, we're done. Bradley, don't do this. I pleaded, genuine fear creeping into my voice. Was he abandoning the plan? I have to, Dad. It's the only way. He turned to Volkov. There's a cabin on the property by the lake. Private, no windows. We can do it there. Volkov nodded to Dmitri, who immediately began checking his phone, probably scanning for surveillance. They wouldn't find any. The cabin wasn't part of our setup. Very well, Volkov agreed. But your father stays here with my men. Insurance, you understand. As they prepared to leave, Bradley hugged me. I love you, Dad. Trust me. He whispered, too low for anyone else to hear. They left Bradley, Volkov, and Dmitri heading for the cabin. The remaining men spread out watching us. Morrison and I sat in tense silence. Then through my earpiece I heard Chen's voice. All units hold. Bradley's improvising. His wire is still transmitting. From the cabin, we heard Bradley's voice. The password is Mom's maiden name, plus her birthday. Margaret would appreciate the irony, paying you with money you'll never get to spend. What does that mean? Volkov's voice sharp with suspicion. Just enter the code Hartwell 051545. A pause. Then Dmitri. Boss, something's wrong. This isn't a wallet, it's… FBI, nobody move. The sound of chaos erupted through our earpieces. Shouts, scuffling Volkov, screaming in Russian. In the house, his men reached for weapons, but froze as dozens of agents materialized from hidden positions, weapons drawn. Federal agents. Everyone on the ground now. I dropped behind the couch as the room exploded into controlled chaos. The FBI's tactical team moved with precision, disarming and restraining Volkov's men in seconds. Morrison pulled me into the dining room, where Judge Hartwell was already on the phone. "Federal warrants executed," she said calmly. "Multiple counts of extortion money laundering conspiracy to commit murder." Through the window, I saw agents leading Volkov, Dmitri, and Bradley back from the cabin. My son was unharmed, walking freely, while the Russians were in handcuffs. Agent Park appeared grinning. "Your son did brilliantly. Got Volkov to confess to 3 murders, the entire structure of his organization, even his contacts in city government. That cryptocurrency story, genius improvisation." "What was on his phone?" I asked. "FBI app disguised as a crypto wallet. The password triggered an emergency signal and locked them in the cabin until we arrived. Bradley suggested it this morning, said his mom would have loved the irony." As the scene calmed, Bradley approached me hesitantly. "Dad, are you okay?" I pulled him into a fierce hug. "You scared me to death." "I'm sorry. When Volkov started talking about the murders, I knew we needed more. Mom always said the best trap is one the prey walks into willingly." Jennifer arrived an hour later with the twins having been briefed by the FBI. She was furious, but relieved, clutching Bradley like she might never let go. "You're going to get help," she told him firmly. "Real help. Therapy meetings, whatever it takes." "I know," Bradley agreed. "I want to. For them." He looked at his children who were watching wide-eyed as FBI agents processed the scene. "For all of you." Morrison approached with papers. "Volkov's assets will be frozen. His operations shut down. Bradley's testimony will put him away for life. As for the gambling debts, they're void. Illegal contracts aren't enforceable." Judge Hartwell joined us, her stern face softening as she looked at our family. Margaret would be so proud. She knew Bradley would find his way back. She just had to create the right circumstances. "What about witness protection?" I asked Chen. "Probably not necessary," she replied. "With Volkov's organization dismantled, the threat is minimal. But we'll provide security during the trial, and Bradley will need to stay clean. Any return to gambling." "There won't be," Bradley said firmly. "I've lost too much already. Almost lost everything." As the FBI finished processing the scene and removing prisoners, I found myself in Margaret's study with Bradley. The monitors showed agents cataloging evidence, but we weren't watching. Instead, Bradley held Margaret's final video message, the one meant just for him. "Hi, sweetheart." Margaret's voice filled the room. "If you're watching this with your father, then you chose family over easy money. I knew you would. You were always a good boy who made bad choices, not a bad person making normal ones." Bradley broke down completely, and I held my adult son as he sobbed like a child. "Get help," Margaret continued. "Real help. Not for me, not for your father, but for yourself. You're stronger than you know, Bradley. You just forgot for a while. I love you. I forgive you. Now forgive yourself and become the man I always knew you could be." The video ended with Margaret blowing a kiss, the same gesture that had ended my video. Even in death, even knowing the worst about our son, she'd never stop believing in redemption. "I'll make her proud," Bradley whispered. "I swear I will." Outside, the rain had stopped and sun broke through the clouds. Federal vehicles removed the last of Volkov's crew. Our family stood on the precipice of a new beginning, scarred but intact, saved by a woman whose love transcended death itself. But there was still one more surprise coming, one more piece of Margaret's plan that would truly bring everything full circle. 6 months later, I stood in the same courtroom where Bradley had testified against Marcus Volkov. The Russian crime boss had been sentenced to life without parole, his organization dismantled, his assets seized. Bradley's testimony had been crucial, detailed, and damning. Now the courtroom served a different purpose. Judge Hartwell presided, as Bradley stood before her, Jennifer by his side, ready to receive his own judgment. Bradley Henderson. Judge Hartwell began. You've pled guilty to fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. However, given your cooperation with federal authorities and your demonstrated commitment to rehabilitation, this court sentences you to 5 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and mandatory participation in gambling addiction treatment. Bradley sagged with relief. We'd feared worse, much worse. But the FBI had advocated for leniency, and his 6 months of perfect behavior had spoken volumes. Furthermore, Judge Hartwell continued, you're ordered to make restitution to those you defrauded, beginning with your father. I will, Your Honor, Bradley said clearly. I've already started. I'm working 2 jobs, and every penny beyond basic expenses goes to paying back what I stole. It was true. Bradley had taken work at a hardware store during the day and drove delivery trucks at night. He'd insisted on moving his family to a modest apartment, selling everything excessive. The twins attended public school now and seemed happier for it. After court, we gathered at the estate for what had become a monthly tradition. The massive property no longer felt empty. We'd converted the East Wing into a resource center for gambling addiction support, and today was our grand opening. Mom would have loved this, Bradley said as we watched recovering addicts and their families tour the facilities. He was right. The Margaret Henderson Center for Recovery had been my idea, but Bradley's passion project. He'd worked tirelessly to set it up using his insider knowledge to create programs that actually helped. Sarah arrived, my granddaughter, who'd shocked everyone by appearing that day with the FBI. She hugged Bradley, their relationship finally healed after years of strain. Proud of you, Dad, she told him. I'm proud of me too, Bradley replied, then laughed. That sounds conceited, but my therapist says I need to acknowledge progress. The therapist had been a godsend. Dr. Williams specialized in addiction recovery and had helped Bradley understand the roots of his gambling compulsion. Turns out, it went back to his childhood need to prove himself to be as successful as his grandfather, to earn what he thought was conditional love. We loved you unconditionally, I'd told him during one family session. You just couldn't see it. I see it now, he'd replied. The doorbell rang, interrupting my reminiscence. Jacob answered it, bringing in a tall black woman in her 50s, carrying a worn leather album. Mr. Henderson, she said. I'm Diana Morrison. I believe you've been expecting me. The wedding album. Margaret's signal from her video message months ago. I'd almost forgotten. Please come in, I said, curious. Diana smiled. I was Margaret's roommate at Columbia. We lost touch for many years, but she reached out 2 years ago. She hired me, actually. I'm a forensic accountant. We settled in the study, the same room where so many revelations had unfolded. Diana opened the album, but instead of photos, it contained documents. Margaret suspected Bradley's problems extended beyond gambling, Diana explained. She hired me to do a complete audit of his finances going back 10 years. What I found was concerning, but also hopeful. She showed us records of Bradley's slow descent into addiction. But more importantly, she showed us something else. Every time Bradley had won big, he'd donated to charity. Thousands of dollars to children's hospitals, food banks, homeless shelters. Even in his sickness, he tried to do good, Diana said. Margaret wanted you both to know that. She said it proved he wasn't lost, just sick. Bradley stared at the records, tears streaming. I'd forgotten. When I won, I felt so guilty. I tried to balance it out, make it okay somehow. Addiction is a disease, Diana continued. Margaret wanted me to tell you this when Bradley was in recovery, not before. She said you'd both need to hear it when you could really understand. She pulled out one final document. This is a trust Margaret established. $10 million. but it can only be accessed for addiction treatment and recovery programs. Bradley and Howard are co-trustees. She wanted you to work together to help others like Bradley. I looked at my son, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not the addict who'd betrayed me, not the child I'd idealized, but the complex human being who'd fought demons and was winning. "We'll make good use of it," I promised. The rest of the day was a celebration. The center officially opened with recovering addicts sharing their stories. Bradley spoke too honestly and powerfully about his journey. Several people approached him afterward, seeing hope in his recovery. That evening, as the sun set over the estate, I found myself at Margaret's grave. Bradley joined me, and we stood in comfortable silence. "I dream about her sometimes," Bradley said. "She tells me she's proud." "She is," I assured him. "Wherever she is, she's proud." "Dad." Bradley hesitated. "I've been thinking. The estate is too big for just you. Jennifer and I have been discussing it, and if you're willing, we'd like to move back. Not into the main house, but the carriage house. I could help manage the center, be closer to you." "What about your independence? Your therapist says you need to stand on your own." "I have been. 6 months now. But family isn't about dependence or independence. It's about interdependence, supporting each other. I want my kids to know their grandfather. I want to be here for you as you get older. Not for money, not for inheritance, just for family." I considered it. The estate had felt empty since Margaret died, but lately, with the center bringing life to it, that had changed. Having Bradley and his family nearby healthy and whole felt right. "I'd like that," I said simply. As we walked back to the house, Bradley asked, "Do you think people can really change deep down? Fundamentally change?" I thought about everything we'd been through. The betrayal, the fear, the elaborate trap Margaret had set not to destroy Bradley, but to save him. The way he'd risked everything to help catch Volkov. His daily struggle to stay clean, to make amends, to build something positive from the wreckage of his addiction. "Yes," I said firmly. "I've seen it happen." The Margaret Henderson Center for Recovery would go on to help thousands over the years. Bradley would maintain his sobriety, becoming a respected advocate for addiction awareness. His children would grow up understanding that people could make terrible mistakes and still deserve love and redemption. And I would spend my remaining years, not as the bitter victim of betrayal, but as a man who learned that love sometimes means letting people fall, so they can learn to stand, that wisdom involves preparing for the worst, while believing in the best, and that the greatest inheritance we can leave our children isn't money, but the opportunity to become who they're meant to be. Margaret had known all of this. In her final act of love, she'd orchestrated not just justice, but redemption. She'd saved both her son and her husband, teaching us that strength isn't about never falling, but about helping each other rise. So I ask you this: have you ever had to choose between enabling someone you love and letting them face consequences? How do you balance love with tough truth? Share your thoughts below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about family redemption and the complicated ways love manifests in our lives. And please share this with anyone who might need to hear that it's never too late to change, never too late to make amends, and never too late to become the person you're meant to be. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you find in your own life the wisdom to know when to stand firm and when to extend grace. And may you always remember that the greatest fortune isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch and the love we leave behind. Until next time, this is Howard Henderson reminding you that every ending is also a beginning, and every trap can become a door to freedom if we're brave enough to walk through it.